All right, here we go. Week 16 DFS. Sorry we didn't have a show last week. I was traveling, but we are back in the saddle for the Fantasy Life DFS Jam. I'm Peter Overzet. If this is your first time tuning into this program, we generally do a high-level overview of the slate, go through some of the totals, look at some of the ADPs on Underdog. I like to focus on the Battle Royale daily games on Underdog, and then we hop in some drafts, see what we're liking on the week. I got in some drafts last night, so I got a little bit of the lay of the land already. Although I will say, and I tweeted this out yesterday, that week 16 has big week 18 energy right now. Just the amount of moving pieces with injuries and backup quarterbacks, doing the drafts last night, there felt like way less certainty, even in the top half of the board than normal. So that'll always make things interesting to navigate. But if you're trying to get 150 entries in, like I try to do each week, you got to start drafting early, and knowing how to navigate that is certainly an important skill. Otherwise, if you're only going to do a handful of entries, it's probably a week to wait a little bit, see how things shake out. A few things on my mind just as far as dominoes, and I wrote about these in the newsletter this morning, is the impact of Marvin Harrison Jr. returning for Michael Wilson. Like, there is such a polarized range of outcomes for Michael Wilson with and without Marvin Harrison. He's averaging literally 16 targets a game without Marvin Harrison Jr. in the lineup. And then he's at a more pedestrian, 6 or 7 targets when Marv is playing. So that's a huge swing. Like, it makes Michael Wilson this incredible smash pick to a fringe pick. And then the other one I'm monitoring is if Drake London returns. He hasn't played in, I think, over a month now, 5 weeks. And I do think that kind of dings Kyle Pitts' ceiling. Now, the tight end position is still, I would say, poor enough this week that Kyle Pitts is still very much in play because of the matchup, because his ability to earn targets. But, a 10 plus target game with multiple touchdowns, that is a lot harder to envision with Drake London. So those are a couple I'm keeping tabs on there as this week gets going. But let's go ahead and start with a little overview of what games we're looking at. We got Trevor in the chat, GM. So we have tonight Rams Seahawks. So that means we get no Puka, we get no JSN on the main slate, which certainly hurts the cause a little bit. On Sunday, though, we're going to kick things off with Tampa Bay and Carolina. That game has a 45-point total. The Bucs are now a little bit of a mess with Mike Evans returning. I think Mike Evans is an awesome click this week in drafts, but the Godwin and Igbokwe stuff's a little trickier. And I think the Carolina running backs are still interesting, mainly Rico Dowdle there. Vikings Giants, this is a tough one here. Can you go to Justin Jefferson? Is this vitally the week that Justin Jefferson gets going? Not a ton to love on the Giants, although I do like Tyrone Tracy a little bit as a cheap running back. This Chargers-Cowboys game is interesting to me. It has a high total at 49.5, but the way the Chargers have been playing football is really not fantasy friendly right now. I think Ladd and Herbert, to me, look overvalued. I'd prefer to play this through Hampton and just kind of bank on the rookie's workload increasing since he's come back from injury. I like the Cowboys side, though. I think this could be a good bounce back spot for George Pickens. There's this Chiefs-Titans game, which mostly feels like a stay away. Obviously, no Mahomes. It looks like we're going to get no Rashee Rice because of the concussion protocol. Maybe a little Pollard love just because he's been carrying the load for the Titans, but I don't know about this one. I mean, if Rashee Rice is out, Travis Kelce will project very well, and yet I don't have a ton of interest in it myself, so we'll see how that one develops. Bills, Browns, of course, Josh Allen, of course, James Cook. Beyond that, I'm not sure. We were on the LG show yesterday or Tuesday talking about Quinshon Judkins, and this is a really tough one for me because their offensive line's really banged up, but it's a great matchup. The Bills have been getting gashed with up the interior there by opposing running backs. So theoretically, a good matchup for Judkins, but I just don't know how much this offensive line is going to hold up. We then have this Bengals-Dolphins game, and the total has come down here. This was looking to be one of the better games of the week, but now we introduce way more volatility with Quinn Ewers at quarterback and not Tua. And that certainly takes the bloom off the rose a little bit as far as Darren Waller, who has the best matchup, even Achane Waddle it's not that they can't get there. It's just there's way more volatility with Ewers. We kind of know what we're getting with Tua, and he's competent enough to get those top playmakers the ball and keep the offense semi-functional. We just don't know if that's going to be the case with Ewers. Jets Saints, I really like the Saints passing game here. I mean, Tyler Shuck, Olave, Juwan Johnson, I think all of them are in play in BR drafts. This Jags-Broncos game with a total of 47, very, very intriguing to me. Of course, Trevor Lawrence and ETN coming off of massive games. Based on the ADPs right now, it does seem like drafters are a little scared off because of the Broncos matchup, but I think this has some back and forth potential. I really like RJ Harvey. I like Bo Nix. These teams are kind of similar in that you feel good about the quarterback and the running back, but the pass catchers is kind of a, shrug your shoulders and take a guess kind of situation there, but not a bad spot for Sutton. This Falcons-Cardinals game, and we actually have two games in the late window that look awesome. What else needs to be said about the Cardinals at this point? We know what they're going to do. Jacoby Brissett's going to drop back, and he's going to throw it over and over and over again, especially with Bam Knight out of the picture now. So they're now down to Michael Carter. But this Falcons-Cardinals game in the Dome here, lots of potential for fantasy points. And I kind of hope Drake London is back just to get this game, popping as much as possible. And then from a total perspective, there's the game of the week, Steelers-Lions here, Lions at home in the Dome. To me, the only question here is, can the Steelers, pace up this game enough to keep it a back and forth? Can we get a big play from Metcalf? Can we get a big play from Kenny Gainwell or whoever's running the ball for the Steelers? Because if we can, this game certainly has shootout potential. Raiders-Texans, this one's going to be brutal. It sounds like we're going to get Geno Smith back in the lineup, so maybe like a slight little bump for Brock Bowers relative to having Kenny Pickett. But man, it is tough to get excited about the Raiders against the Texans. And yeah, that's the last game there in the 4 p.m. window. So, compared to previous weeks, not quite as much stuff to get excited about. And you guys will kind of see that as we hop in drafts here. So I think we'll do what we normally do. And I will do one regular draft, and then we can bust out my randomizer wheel as well to get some ideas. We got a start sit question. Kayshon Boutte or Tony Pollard? I would definitely go with Tony Pollard. I mean, Tony Pollard's workload, he just has a higher floor, and I think I would argue even a higher ceiling than Kayshon Boutte. I mean, you're praying for Boutte to hit on a deep ball. Pollard's going to touch the ball 15 times. So I would certainly go Pollard there if I was in your shoes. Trevor, what's your quarterback pool looking like this week? Yeah, let's go over here and look at the quarterback slate on Underdog. And, like I said, I've done about 20 drafts last night, and, I didn't get too far off the board here. I do find the Herbert price tag to be really tough to stomach. On the road at Dallas, you look at his attempts lately and how many of his completions. I mean, this guy hasn't cleared 15 fantasy points in 5 weeks. I don't know if that guy should be our QB2 on the slate. I like Dak. I like Burrow. I like Brissett. I like Goff. I like Baker. I think my quarterback pool will be fairly deep, getting down here to Lawrence and Bo Nix, certainly. But yeah, I don't think I want to deal with like the Kirk Cousins, Aaron Rodgers types. Dart at home versus Minnesota is a little tough there. So yeah, I think I'll have a slightly narrower pool. I would probably cap it for me mostly at Trevor Lawrence. I think that's where kind of the high end upside really stops. Garage says Ewers did propel Gunnar Helm to being Texas's top wide receiver and fed JT Sanders the year before. Waller could still be okay. Yeah. And I think that's kind of my thought too. Again, tight end is such a weak position as is, that the matchup for Waller and the fact that he can just get there on one touchdown, that's really what you need with these tight ends, is just the touchdown. So yeah, I think Waller is certainly still on the menu. It's just not quite as exciting. And looking at the ADP here, Waller's going ahead of Fannin right now. I'm taking Fannin over Waller for sure. And I think one thing we did last week that I like to do as well is pull up our projections as we go through the draft. I think that's just kind of a nice way to sanity check some of these assumptions and see where our crew is falling on this stuff. let's see, let me sign in actually so I make sure I have access to everything here. And I always tab it over to FanDuel. We don't have Underdog specific projections, but FanDuel is the same half point PPR scoring. So it's a good proxy there. So if we look at our tight end stuff here, wait, is this not updated? It looks like we are seeing, why are we seeing? I'm going to have to, okay, here we go. The main slate, they're calling the Saturday one. So I have to look on the late slate here, but then is this not? Something's up with this one. I'm going to have to message them. I can see some of these projections in here, but like, where's McBride? So yeah, maybe these are getting populated right now. It looks like the Waller one is coming in at 7 right now. So maybe we're not going to be able to use the projections this week. How am I feeling about Bowers? Feels like a tough click for me. Yeah, I think it's a tough click. On the one hand, we saw Trey McBride go beast mode against the Texans last week. Bowers certainly as talented as McBride, but just a polar opposite as far as quarterback play. So yeah, I think it's very fair to be concerned about Bowers, but this is the only other thing I'd say. I mean, McBride is head and shoulders the top tight end play. Then there's Kyle Pitts, who's still a solid play, but if London is back, Pitts at 17.7 is pretty frothy. Every one of these other tight ends are kind of the same to me. Darren Waller, we need a touchdown. Harold Fannin, I like a lot. He had 14 targets last week. Gadsden's been getting squeezed here from a target perspective lately. Kelsey, who knows what they have to play for, what his motivation will be. I like Schultz versus the Raiders, but that could be a blowout situation. Kincaid, is getting 4 targets a game. It's a really weak tight end slate. And because of that, I think Bauer still deserves to be the top of that second tier. But yeah, it's not a great matchup, that's for sure. Do I think Rashi will play? No, I don't. Like, he enters the concussion protocol. Generally, we see these guys miss at least one game. They have nothing to play for at this point. Mahomes isn't in. It seems unlikely to me that Rashi would play. So yeah, I'm kind of drafting under the assumption he doesn't. Definitely Pollard or K9 over Rashi Rice. Yeah, I don't think Rashi's going to go. Any AD Mitchell love? Yeah, I have a little bit of love for him. Dwayne wrote him up in his rankings risers piece. I wish it was Tyrod Taylor, but it was nice to see him connect with Brady Cook last week for a touchdown here. And so, yeah, back-to-back, he had the dud versus Miami, but before that, the big game against Atlanta, and then he scores the touchdown on 9 targets versus Jacksonville. And the matchup is good, at New Orleans. So, yeah, I think he's pretty boom busty, right? Like, there's certainly scenarios where he scores 5, but we know that 20 points is in his range of outcomes. And he's cheap, right? AD Mitchell down here, ADP of 35.9. That's below Juju, below Worthy, Shakir. So, yeah, I think he's an intriguing scroll this week. So we got the 103 here in our first draft. Last night when I was doing drafts, Achane, his ADP was the 101, but it looks like Gibbs and Bijan have quickly flipped him in ADP. You got Chase and Amon-Ra up here. Trey McBride, James Cook, Josh Allen. We'll go ahead and take Achane at 3. If drafting Shuck, can you run him naked or only pair with Olave? I wouldn't do naked Shuck. I know he did have those rushing touchdowns a couple weeks ago, but even then, he only cleared 22 points with 2 rushing touchdowns. He just doesn't have that high of a ceiling unless he's throwing for 3 touchdowns. I think you need him to throw 3 touchdowns to get to 25 points to be a quarterback that could be in a winning lineup. And if he's throwing for 3, I want him stacked with Olave or Jawan Johnson would be the other one I would do there. All right, so now we have a decision here. I do think running back drops off a bit after Bucky. So I'm going to go ahead and do Achane and Bucky. Obviously, CeeDee Lamb here is a solid selection as well. But I think Lamb, J-Mo, Wilson, Evans, Pickens, fairly comparable there. And I think just locking up that second running back on this build makes sense. And then we'll be able to get one of these wide receivers who remains. So you can see here in our projections, we have Jamar Chase at 16.4. And again, there's some wonky stuff going on in here. I don't know where Amon-Ra is. But we have Olave right up here next to Lamb, ahead of Pickens slightly. Our projections do have Rashee Rice in right now. But like I said, I'm skeptical he's going to play. Mike Evans. And then, yeah, Ladd down here well below those guys. I find Ladd a little overvalued. We'll take George Pickens here. He's the one who comes back. 4 straight wide receivers go. But we'll get George Pickens here. And so we start Devon Achane versus Cincinnati, who has obviously been awful against running backs this year. Bucky at Carolina. And then George Pickens here too, and just hoping that he has his head on straight for this matchup versus the Chargers. Let me pull up the DVP stuff here too as well. Always like glancing at this stuff. Of course, the DVP stuff is baked into good projections. It's baked into rankings, but it is nice to take a peek at here. Obviously, Bengals give up the biggest fantasy boost to opposing running backs. And then Carolina's been middle of the road here. They're about neutral, plus 0.5. So a decent matchup there for Bucky. So we have a tight end, a wide receiver, and a quarterback left here. And we can figure out how we want to play that. I mean, Dak with Pickens certainly makes sense. Let's see. Thoughts on Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason? That's a good question. I honestly haven't given them a ton of thought lately. My default would be to Aaron Jones, but we can dig into the utilization a little bit here in a second. Because the Lamb drafter is behind me, I'm going to go ahead and lock up Dak now. I would have taken Olave had he fallen, but here there's nothing else I have to have at wide receiver or tight end. So let's lock up Dak to George Pickens first. But yeah, let me check out the usage for those backs. And I'll use the comparison tool just to try to get a little bit bigger of a sample size on the Minnesota backs here over the past few weeks. But I do think it's a good spot to look at, versus the Giants. So we'll get Mason and we'll get Jones in here. And let's look, I don't know, the past 3 weeks, 13, 14, 15, and just see if there's any trends. So the utilization still pointing toward Jones over this span, 47% of the snaps to 31. But the rush attempts have definitely narrowed. Aaron Jones still definitely besting him in the targets department. We are back on the clock. Let's go ahead and grab Bowers here. Fannon's gone. So we'll grab Bowers. I still think Bowers right after Fannon gives you a decent floor for your tight end production. I do like that Geno's back. Why isn't this trend line working here? Normally I can see the trend line, but man, I'll have to flag this for these guys here. But yeah, my thought would be still lean to Aaron Jones because of that pass catching work. It's just a lot better role. With Jordan Mason, it's your touchdown hunting. It's kind of like the Blake Corum role, except Jordan Mason isn't in near as good of an offense as Blake Corum. Let's see here. Any interest in playing Michael Carter this week with everyone else in that room injured? Yeah, I think he's a viable scroll. If we look at some of these guys here on the back end, Kenny Gainwell, obviously in play, Tracy in play, Pollard, who we discussed, Aaron Jones, who we just discussed. And I think Michael Carter is in that. I mean, this is kind of, to me, the sweet spot for running back scrolls this week. Gainwell, Tracy, Pollard, Jones, Carter. But yeah, with no Bam Knight, 14 attempts for 56 yards, 4 receptions for 38 yards. Yeah, the matchup versus the Falcons is neutral there. I think it's fair to wonder about the ceiling for Michael Carter. I was a big Bam Knight proponent during this stretch when he had a very similar role to this, right? You were getting almost 15 plus touches a game, 3 to 4 targets a game. It's a strong role, but you're going to need the touchdown or the big play to really, smash. All right, now we have our final selection here, and we can see if there's any correlation we want. I do think Ted Arroyo opposite Bucky Irving. He didn't practice yesterday. We'll see if he practices today. If he doesn't go, Jalen Coker is going to project well, and we could swap to him. There's some okay options down here, but I think we'll just take the Q tag with Ted Arroyo. Sorry. And know that we can swap if needed. Let me bust out. I think I still have all of those permutations, yes, of various draft structures, so we can do this for some more drafts here. So let's spin the wheel, and I will hop in another draft, and we'll see what the randomizer gods are going to. Running back, wide receiver, tight end, running back, quarterback, wide receiver, which is kind of similar to what we just did. We did running back, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end, wide receiver. So yeah, we'll go running back, wide receiver, third round tight end, probably going to be Kyle Pitts. Trevor, do you think Troy Franklin is playable this week with Bryant returning? Yeah, that does make it tough. His targets obviously spiked last week with Green Bay with Bryant out, but the week before when Bryant was really coming on, we saw that really spread out between Sutton, Franklin, and Bryant. To me, I'd probably just lean into Sutton or playing Bo Nix naked, and I think I'm going to probably sidestep the mess between Franklin and Bryant. That's just kind of my gut read on it. What's up, Steven? Coop here, tough decisions. Genty and Bowers in the flexes, but you could start Debo, Marks, Monangai, Diggs. Thoughts? Well, first, we're definitely going to need to see the health on Marks. If Marks plays, it's a really good matchup. Again, for Houston versus the Raiders, that would probably be my lean. Monangai, again, kind of that Jordan Mason, Blake Corum issue where he has a good shot at a goal line touchdown, but can probably burn you. If not, Debo is a little tough for me. Diggs, man, that's tough. My gut says Marks for sure if he goes, and probably Diggs otherwise. But yeah, that is a tough one. All right, I'm going to have to stay on top of this. So this is going to be a running back here with my first selection. And we have back-to-back picks, so running back and wide receiver here. Means I'm going to get one of Jamar Chase or Amon-Ra, which is nice. Okay, so yeah, I'm going running back, wide receiver. So we will go James Cook and then Amon-Ra. Cook versus Cleveland, Amon-Ra versus Pitt. Marks or Parkinson in the flex. So one of the things Dwayne wrote about in the utilization report this week, and I know there's a lot of enthusiasm for Colby Parkinson right now, but I do think it's still a little bit more of a fragile situation than people maybe realize. Let me pull this up because Dwayne had some good stats on this in the utilization report. Yeah, so Parkinson has eclipsed a 70% route participation rate in back-to-back contests with an 18% target share. He upgrades to high-end tight end 2 territory without Higbee. However, like the one thing to notice is you go down here and you look at how things were split when Devontae Adams was off the field. Ferguson was actually running 100% of the snaps and got 100% of the routes. Parkinson was at 93% of the snaps, 50% of the routes. And then Davis Allen is also running a decent amount of routes on 93% of the snaps. So this is a full-blown 3 tight end committee here. I still think you're touchdown hunting. Could he score a touchdown? Absolutely. But it's not a comfy start for me, especially because you have to make that decision tonight as well. Like I'd rather leave open the flexibility to play Marks if he goes, because I think Marks would be a significantly better play than Parkinson. So I would hold out and just assume that you have a comparable play to Parkinson if Marks doesn't go that you could play on Sunday. But yeah. Would I play JJM this week against a terrible New York Giants D? I'm thinking, in my 150 lineups, I might have a couple JJ McCarthy's to Jefferson, maybe one naked JJ McCarthy. Yeah, but just like a sprinkle. Like 1 to 2 lineups probably at most would be my guess. All right, my next selection has to be a tight end here. So we're going to do Pitts or Bowers. And then we're going to go running back after that. I like these 3 options here: Brown, Hampton, and ETN. All right, so we get Kyle Pitts here, which is nice. Right? Is my next click tight end? Yes. 3rd round click tight end. And now we're to running back. I just want to see our projections real quick on these guys. We do have Chase Brown fairly high at 13.5. Hampton's kind of a leap of faith that his workload increases, and you can run on Dallas a good bit. So I do like that. And ETN has just had a monster role of late. But yeah, let's grab Chase Brown. We'll lean into our fantasy life projections here. And then the nice thing when you take Amon-Ra this week, I guess the Jameson Williams drafter is competing with you for Goff. But I do like having the Goff stack outs there. And if we lose out Goff and this drafter from the 2-hole grabs him to pair with JMO, then we can finish this draft with a quarterback wide receiver stack. We could pick out another quarterback wide receiver stack, which would be fine. Seeing if there's any other correlation angles I would want to get to here. Yeah, so getting back to the Franklin stuff, Sutton has been the one stable guy, right? So even with Bryant out of the lineup, in and out of the lineup, the past 2 weeks, he's had 10 targets. 10 targets versus Las Vegas, 10 versus Green Bay, 6 receptions, 7 receptions, cleared 100 yards last week, scored that touchdown. So he definitely feels like the safest bet there. And JMB does grab him here. Goff makes it back to me, though. So we are going to just stack up Goff with Amon-Ra here as our quarterback selection. I'm looking at DVP. I wanted to see the quarterback projections up here. We do have still a pretty decent projection on Dart. And again, something is up with our stuff right now where Amon-Ra is not showing up in these. Here's Goff. Goff we have as the QB3 just behind Allen and Brissett. So we'll take Goff here, and then let's find another wide receiver we like. Jalen Waddle with Quinn Ewers. I don't know how I feel about that. We could do Jacoby versus Denver. We could do Wan'Dale Robinson. Why don't we do Jacoby Myers? He's been just a high target floor. He hasn't had less than 6 targets in this stretch over the past 5 weeks. And we can grab Jacoby here. So this team finishes up with a Goff to Amon-Ra stack, James Cook, Chase Brown, Amon-Ra, Jacoby, Kyle Pitts. And let me now just see, does this secondary, I believe I now have it filtered correctly to show our projections for the whole slate. So if you guys are checking out Fantasy Life projections, things are a little wonky because of the Saturday games. But if you do secondary as the slate drop down, you'll get the full spectrum of players on this main slate. So we can kind of circle back to tight ends here. We do have McBride and Pitts at the top, and we do have Fannin ahead of Bowers. And then you kind of have this next tier with Kelsey and Johnson, and then another tier down here to Gadsden, Kincaid, and Ferguson. Man, Michael Carter over Genty. Wow. We have those guys back to back in the projections here. You can see 10.9 for Carter, 10.8 for Genty. Honestly, what I'd say is I think that the floor, and even though our floor projections are the same, I kind of feel like the floor for Carter is a little bit better. With Genty, you just have so much risk that the offense, and we've seen it plenty of times this season, that the offense is just completely inept. And that downside risk for Genty, I think makes it a little scarier. So in a season-long league, if I were a favorite or I thought it was an even matchup, I do think I would play Carter over Genty. All right, let's spin the wheel here and we can hop in another draft. We'll see what configuration here the randomizer gods give us for this next Battle Royale draft. All right. We have a running back, wide receiver, quarterback, running back, tight end. So we'll get to a punt tight end here, running back, wide receiver, quarterback. And I will hop in a draft here. And while we're waiting for this to fill, I do need to tell you guys about our sponsor. Shout out to Xfinity. And if you guys call yourself a sports fan, which I assume you do if you're watching this, you got to have Xfinity, all the games, all in one place. They have every pro football game and over 1,000 college games, highlights and alerts all in one place. You can build a multi-view to watch 4 games at once. And their Xfinity fan view includes live scores, odds, and stats all in one place, personalized to you. There's also enhanced 4K. It's called Xfinity Enhanced 4K. It looks incredible. And there's a voice remote. You just say football to access all of these features. Imagine all your football all in one place. It's that easy. Learn more at Xfinity.com, and restrictions do apply. New residential customers only. Taxes and fees extra and subject to change. All right, we got the 1-5 here for this next draft. If you're just tuning in, we're talking Week 16 DFS. We're drafting teams here on Underdog, and we're spinning a wheel to dictate which position we take at each selection. This week in the BR, if you guys are unfamiliar here, these are $7 snake drafts. So they're like a best ball draft, but instead of being 18 rounds with 12 other or 11 other drafters, these are just 6 rounds with 5 other drafters. So 36 players are selected. There's a $7 buy-in, 40,200 entrants this week, and first place takes down that coveted $30,000 top prize. And if you guys want to see and hear about more Battle Royale strategy, I do a show on Fridays on my YouTube channel, the Peter Overzet YouTube channel, with John and Nez from the Badge Bros, and we break down the slate and we share all of our favorite sleepers, favorite angles. We also talk about strategic differences for small field contests versus these large field contests like this one. We also talk a little 12-person draft strategy. If you want to go deeper into the player pool, those 12-person drafts, the goal line stand, are very fun, and you can go deep when 72 players are drafted in a contest. All right, this first selection needs to be a running back for me, which means it's going to be James Cook, because he is definitely the best running back selection available. You can see here our projections have it similar to ADP. Gibbs, Bijan, Achane, and then Cook not far behind Achane there. We do have ETN up here. I was kind of debating between Chase Brown and ETN. Very similar projections there. So yeah, we will take James Cook as mandated by the wheel. And then we will be selecting a wide receiver. Let's see how we have Nico and CeeDee Lamb projected. We have Nico at 13, CeeDee Lamb at 12.7. You can see here we actually have Michael Wilson projected even higher. Like I said, I kind of want to see how the Marvin Harrison stuff shakes out before I load up on Michael Wilson. The one thing that was kind of interesting about the report for Marvin Harrison Jr. yesterday was they actually didn't practice. They do these estimated practices. It was technically a walkthrough. And they said they do the estimated participation, and they said he would have been questionable had they held a real practice. We'll have to see what happens today. But yeah, if Marvin Harrison doesn't go, no one needs me to tell them that Michael Wilson is an absolute jam. but I'm just being slightly cautious because he will be fairly overdrafted if Marvin Harrison is back at these current prices. Yeah, Coop, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, asking, are Dolphins pass catchers viable with Ewers? I think they're viable. I would prefer to take on the risk with Waller. Again, just we were going through the tight end position. It's a pretty weak position this week. You basically just need a touchdown. We know that that he has a big red zone role. The Waddle stuff is a little tougher. One of the interesting things to kind of solve for with the Bengals this year is they've been so bad against the run in tight ends. They've actually been decent against number one wide receivers. DJ Turner's had a good year, but we've seen guys like Zay Flowers be able to beat him a little bit there. So I think in season long, I think you're probably plugging your nose and starting Waddle, but I'm going to try to shy away from him a little bit here in DFS. All right, my next selection is a wide receiver, and I'm pretty sure this is going to be Chris Olave for me. Yeah, we have him ranked as the wide receiver 6. Michael Wilson's off the board. Jameson's off the board. Lamb's off the board. This is definitely going to be Chris Olave for me here. Our 4th round selection is going to be a quarterback. Why don't we do, so we could do a naked quarterback. We could do Shuck. We could do Stroud. Or we could set up like another selection with the tight end. Let's go ahead and just lock up. Let's do Stroud. Let's do Stroud out home here versus Las Vegas. One thing we could potentially do on this lineup is we could do a double stack. We could have our last selection be Dalton Schultz. I do like the Stroud double stacks because, Stroud has been solid this year. Last week, he scored 23.4 points on 3 touchdowns. He's not really rushing a ton. In the volume, the play volume hasn't been that good because they're not getting pushed, right? Their defense is so good that he has to get there on elite efficiency. It's certainly possible, but I guess this is a long way of saying, I think if Stroud is like the number 1 quarterback on the slate, it's because he's throwing 4 touchdowns. He's probably throwing 4 touchdowns on, 270 yards. And if he's throwing 4 touchdowns, I want to be double stacking this guy. It's not to say a skinny stack couldn't get home, but it's to say, as far as these quarterbacks and how you approach them, he's one that I would actually really consider for double stacks. And the other thing for me, when I'm doing double stacks, I like doing it with the tight end position. I don't necessarily love, the 2 wide receivers because then you're asking a lot of those guys when typically you're going to need 20 plus points from both of your wide receivers. It's certainly possible J-Mo and Amon-Ra could do it, but in most instances, if you're double stacking, you want one of the pieces to be the tight end. But we first have to do a running back, and then we will grab our tight end selection. We could also do Brock Bowers as the bring back, which again, I think tells a nice story. If CJ Stroud continues to throw, it means the Raiders are probably hanging in that game a little bit. Let's go ahead and buy the dip here on Omarion Hampton. We haven't selected him yet. I think the other one would be RJ Harvey. I could go that way. I think our projections like Harvey over Hampton. Okay, yeah. Why don't we go Harvey? I want to actually dig into our projection on Hampton and see if we even have it up here or if we just have him buried. Let's see here. Yeah, okay. So we're pretty low on Hampton. We have him at 8.8. So yeah, I'll side with our projections there and grab Harvey. And then this is going to be the tight end. And I do think I could go either way here. We can go Brock Bowers or Dalton Schultz. Let's go ahead and do, Brock Bowers slides here, 7 picks past ADP. I don't mind the Schultz thing. But let's say Brock Bowers does the Trey McBride from last week. Let's say he does it, and we'll grab him as the bring back. So we finish CJ Stroud to Nico with the Brock Bowers bring back. We got Olave. We got RJ Harvey, James Cook. I wouldn't be scared off from this RJ Harvey Q tag. He practiced in full yesterday. He was dealing with a little ribs injury, but getting in a full practice on a Wednesday has to be good news for us. All right. We'll keep vibing here, spinning the wheel, drafting teams. If you guys are watching over on X, looks like we have 1,600 some people watching over combined on X and YouTube. Make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel here on Fantasy Life. I mention it every week, but we have all kinds of great shows. I was just listening to Dwayne and Ian's utilization pod breakdown, which you can find on this feed, and a lot of other good stuff. All right, this next draft is going to be running back, wide receiver, quarterback, running back, tight end, wide receiver. It would be nice to be able to get a Josh Allen or a Trey McBride here, but Josh Allen is probably not going to fall to me in the third round, unfortunately. All right, we got the 1617. This is going to be cruel. This is going to be cruel because you're right at Trey McBride and Josh Allen territory, and I got to go running back, wide receiver. But I have integrity, and what the wheel says, I do. Once you go down this path of wheel life, you got to commit to it. You got to commit to it. Let's look back. I wanted to look at some of the other quarterback projections here. You can see quarterback is extremely flat this week. You know, if I had to bucket it into tiers, you have Josh Allen in a tier of his own. Then you have a secondary tier with Brissett and Goff. You have another tier after that with Burrow, Dart, Herbert, Mayfield, and Dak, or even Mayfield by projections. And then you have this next tier, Dak, Nick, Stroud, Chuck, Trevor Lawrence. And that really is, I think, the quarterback pool. I mean, the one that I would IKB, I prefer Dak over Herbert. I don't necessarily love Dart quite as much as this. I think I like Mayfield a smidge more than Dart, just now having all of his weapons back. All right, running back, wide receiver for me. We'll do James Cook again. Let's do a CeeDee Lamb share this time. I think we did a James Cook, Nico Collins. Let's do a James Cook and CeeDee Lamb here. Ooh, this is a fun question. What's your personal favorite wide receiver plus QB pair on the week? I'm trying to think, should I be fancy or should I be, right up the middle here? I mean, I will say like JMO with Goff always feels good because to me, Amon-Ra can get there in different game environments. He can have the 10 catch game. He can score the touchdown and Goff can still be average. But the games where Goff really goes nuts, where he's scoring 25 plus points, it's because JMO's also ripping off big plays. So that JMO to Jared Goff stack feels really good. And honestly, I like this Baker to Evans one too. Similar thing, Baker's flying a little bit under the radar. It hasn't been the best finish to the season for him, but you see even last week, Evans comes back to the lineup and he immediately scores 20 points here. I think there's a pretty massive ceiling with Evans and Mayfield. So those would be my two there. Obviously getting off the board a little bit, Olave to Shuck, I think is a really fun one. Yeah, if I get to count McBride as a wide receiver, which I mean, we probably should at this point. McBride to Brissett is awesome. All right, this next selection is a quarterback. So we're definitely going to do Dak with CeeDee here and just not mess around. So it's Dak, and then we're going to running back after that. Let's do Dak and let's get ETN in here. I don't think we've selected ETN yet. We were looking at our projections a bit ago. We have ETN projected for the 5th most points on the slate after Gibbs, Bijan, Achane, Cook. Let me throw it back at you, Trevor. Who is your favorite quarterback stack? Yeah, and Trevor says, I'm surprised the total on Pitt Detroit is 52. Just seems high with a team Pitt who drains the clock constantly. I think the reason why, and I agree with you, I think there's concern. I could certainly see scenarios where that game plays to the lower, but Detroit's going to score points. Pittsburgh's defense, they've been leaky on the back end. You can score on them. So the thought is the Lions are up and the Steelers have no choice but to pick up their pace, to throw a little bit more. And I do like that they have DK Metcalf, a guy who can make big plays and speed that game up. So I agree with you. It is not near, like you think of the confidence of like a Rams-Lions game last week having a total of 55. Like the confidence that that game would go over is so much higher just based on the personnel and how those teams play. But I agree with you. There's a lot of risk that if the Steelers, maintain a lead, then they're going to slow the ball down. But if the Lions get a lead early and they're up, double digits, I do think the Steelers will be forced to pick it up. Vibes are bad on Puka. That is certainly the case. This has been like crazy. If you guys haven't seen it on X, he's had like multiple different things. He was trying to bring streamers into the stadium. He was threatening to do like some anti-Semitic trope in zone dance if he scores. Like all of this just seemed to come out of nowhere. I thought Puka was just this low key football dude. And now all of a sudden he's ruffling feathers left and right. All right, what is my pick here? So I did quarterback, running back. So then my next pick is going to be a tight end here. We could play this as a game stack and do Gadsden as the bring back. How have the Cowboys been against tight ends? The Cowboys, why can't I find the Cowboys here? Okay, like middle of the road, nothing to write home about. Or we could do our guy Darren Waller. We've been talking about not being scared about Waller with viewers. Let's grab a Waller share here. That's fine. And then we'll get our final wide receiver. We could do our bring back with Ladd, but I am a little worried about that. I think I'm not going to force a bring back here. Let's do something with Denver. Let's do ETN and Sutton together. I kind of like that mini correlation there. So we'll go Dak to CeeDee Lamb. We got James Cook and Waller. We'll do an ETN and Cortland Sutton mini correlation there. All right, Juan is in the chat just spamming me with questions. I'll do my best here, Juan. Who for my QB1? I got T. Lawrence and Brissett. Definitely Brissett, brother. Definitely Brissett. On your wide receiver 1, 2, 3 and flex spot, you're definitely playing Mike Evans. I don't think Devontae Adams is playing tonight. You're definitely playing Jacoby Myers. Your wide receiver 3, that's close between Addison and Mitchell. Man, let's see. What do our projections say on Addison versus Mitchell? That's actually a good one. I'll look at the projections here for you. Addison, we have projected for 7.3 and Mitchell at 8.6. So go Mitchell there. And then your flex between Sharps, Henderson, Jacobs. Jacobs mispractice, say Taylor. Man, you got to get those running backs in. So you got to flex. You got to flex Henderson, Jacobs, or Taylor. I assume you're playing the other two. So there you go. Play those two running backs and flex the other one. Look at you. Juan is just coming after me right now. No, don't mess with those guys. Juan, you just want me to set your entire lineup for you? Which defense? You got to go look at our rankings here. But looking at our projection, holy cow, Texans have a nearly 5-point higher projection than anyone else. Bengals are 7th. Bucks are below that. Vikings go Bengals. Go Bengals versus Quinn Ewers. What's up, Pat? And Trevor's favorite snack is Knicks or Sutton. Brissett. Ooh, to Marvin Harrison if there's positive news on him. Lawrence to Jacoby. There you go. All right. We got time for one more draft here. Let's spin the wheel. Please, can I have something that allows me to draft Trey McBride? Can I get a round 2 tight end? It just won't let me. It just won't let me. Wide receiver, running back, tight end, QB. There it is. Snap filled. We got friends and family here. All right, we got the 1-4. So that's actually a really nice spot to be for wanting a wide receiver because we can take Chase or Amon-Ra. And then at 9, we're looking at a running back. So maybe Cook falls, otherwise Bucky, or we're dipping into that next tier. Oh, my good friend Chip Skylark in the 101 here. And you know I'm being serious when I call him by his government name and not Chipsy. Yeah, Juan, I expect a tip, brother. In all honesty, I can give you like my gut reads, but all I do is what I just did, and I go look at projections, I go look at rankings, and like that's the whole point of subscribing and paying smarter people who devote their life to getting really accurate rankings and projections, and just lean on them. And if you need to IKB it, you know, you can do that in a spot. Let's do Jamar Chase. We haven't done Chase yet on stream. We did an Amon-Ra team. Maybe Burrow will be available for us in the last round. But I do, one of the things that's really nice, our projections, we have both floor and ceiling. And that's a lot of the times when I'm really thinking through these start sit questions, I'm thinking through like generally two things. Am I an underdog or not? You know, if I'm a favorite, I want to lean into the higher floor player. I want to lock in those points and not fumble my lead. If I feel like I'm more of a dog, then I'm willing to take on more risk and, you know, maybe someone who's a little bit more boom bust. So I do think the context of your matchup really matters there. All right, running back, this is going to be Bucky. Although I don't even think we have that great of a projection on Bucky. Yeah, we do not have a bullish projection on Bucky. Wow. Yeah, he's way down here. I do think this is one of those spots where the ceiling still is very nice for Bucky. We know who he is as a player and in that matchup, but it is notable that our projections aren't as high on Bucky as the ADP is. Am I in any season-long semifinals and home league type things, Pete? It's kind of honestly sad. The main leagues I play Dynasty. I'm not in the semis there. I play high stakes stuff. We are in the semis of our 5K team that we drafted with Mike Leone, Ben Gretsch, and Pat Carrain. So that one we had a buy on, which is good. The other high stakes teams with the FFPC, those are like a sprint. So we're in the sprint there. And then my guillotine leagues, I was in the first round of the playoffs and I got the chop. You know, you probably saw that on the portfolio review. And that's a long way of saying I'm not in like my old school home league with my high school buddies. That one dissolved a few years ago when no one wanted to commission it and deal with all of the BS. So yeah, most of my season-long stuff is either guillotine or high stakes leagues. And yeah, it's not too many semifinal type structures in those anymore. All right, we are back to wide receiver. We have not selected Michael Wilson yet. Let's grab Michael Wilson here. On this one, we will play for the scenario where Marvin Harrison Jr. is not in. And then our next selection is going to be a running back again. Yeah, we have, I keep forgetting too. Now we have gotten to the point in the season, and I remember this last year for week 16 too, where this is where it starts to get really spread out, right? We have 2 Saturday games. We obviously have tonight, Thursday night, 2 Saturday games, Eagles, Commanders, Packers, Bears. We have the main slate Sunday. We have Sunday night football. We have Monday night football. It's going to be a long, agonizing road to knowing if you're going to advance in your matchups. All right, we're back on the clock here. Let's go ahead and do let's do ETN again. Try not to get bored. That's always certainly an issue when you're drafting a lot of these, to get bored and to diversify for the sake of diversification as opposed to clicking the best player. But I like our ranking and projection on ETN, and I want to keep clicking him here. All right, Coop, sneaking in one more question here. Little clarification. 1 tight end premium, Bowers, Parkinson, and Waller. I would still go Bowers there for tight end premium. You know, Parkinson and Waller, you're touchdown hunting. The floor for Bowers, even in a bad matchup, I think he's going to catch 4 to 5 balls. And I can't say that with utmost confidence for Parkinson and Waller. So with the 1.5 premium, I'm still playing Bowers there. For flex, Diggs, Debo, Monangai, Marks, or remaining tight ends. If Marks goes, for sure Marks. Otherwise, I would just wait on Parkinson. I don't want to burn that spot right now. Although I guess it's not burning the spot. If you want to play Parkinson and then flex Bowers, I think that's fine. I do think that's fine. All right, what's my next selection here? It's got to be a tight end, and then we're going quarterback after this. So let's see. The question, hopefully Burrow comes back. You know, we didn't do the double with Schultz last time. Let's grab one off Dalton Schultz here. And then it gives us a couple quarterback outs. We can do, actually, we have a lot of quarterback outs. We can do Burrow to Chase. We can do Brissett to Wilson, or we can do Stroud to Schultz. Tight end Warren, Loveland, or Gadsden, leaning Loveland if Rome, Burden are out. Yeah, I think that's a good lean. I do. Yeah, if those two are out, like the target volume should be there. Yeah, I mean, the Warren stuff, I just have such little confidence in the play volume for the Colts with Warren. And then Gadsden, the same thing. Like, you have major concerns there as far as how much they're going to throw the ball. So, I'm with you. I think Loveland's the play if Rome and Burden are out. All right, so Brissett goes to the McBride drafter. Can't blame him. I'm going to do Burrow to Chase. Similar thing. You know, those explosion games, if Chase is going for 30, you know, Burrow is going to have a good game here. So, final team, Joe Burrow to Jamar Chase. We got Bucky Irving, Travis Etienne, Michael Wilson, and Dalton Schultz. This has been the Fantasy Life DFS Jam. Thank you all for hanging out. I'll be back again next Thursday. Or will I? Actually, no, I won't, because next Thursday is Christmas. So I won't be back next Thursday, but we'll see you guys the week after. Make sure you guys are subscribed to the Fantasy Life YouTube channel, the Fantasy Life newsletter. I write that 5 days a week, drops in your inbox every morning, completely free. Make sure you guys get it. And if I don't see you guys around the Fantasy Life water cooler, have a happy holidays and good luck in week 16. Peace.